Everyone, the time has come. We're at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
I am going to do a roll call of commission members so that we are all, make sure we've got attendees. Just please respond with a here or yes or some positive acknowledgement. Rich Berlandy.
I'm here.
Emily Brick.
I am here.
You are? You snuck in on me. Awesome.
I'm very sneaky.
You are.
Let's not put that in the minutes.
Okay. We'll strike it start recording. Dave Fox.
Here.
Thank you. Bob Hannon.
Here.
Robert Eisner.
Here.
Mark Simpson.
Here.
Ned Stachin.
Here.
Jay Tulin.
I'm here.
And Guy Wolf.
I'm here.
We got a full crowd tonight. Okay. Mr. Hannon, I'll turn it over to you. We're ready to get going.
Okay. First item on the agenda is Town of Farmington, drainage improvements on Devonwood Drive. Do you want to take the lead from here? I guess it's already up on the screen.
It is, and Mr. Zanke has graced us with his presence in person this evening, so he's here with me.
Good evening, Scott Zanke, Highway and Ground Superintendent for the Town of Farmington. Tonight, we've got a project on Devonwood Drive, which I'll explain to you the existing conditions, ask if there's any questions, and then I'll proceed with the work slated to be done. As you know, we've got several intersections along the Route 4 corridor. The town roads receive all the runoff from the state road, one of which being Devonwood Drive. Knollwood Road and Highwood Road are all the same condition. Some of the existing conditions that we have, I don't know if we have the pictures.
Yep, go to the photos. So that's it.
Yeah, go to the Route 4 end,
Yes, sir.
all the way down.
I shared them in the order I was giving them.
Oh.
That, or you want the water?
Yeah, let's go to the water. This is as of last Friday. We had a rainstorm Thursday night, which was not a significant rainstorm. These pictures were taken in that morning. The picture up on the screen right now is if you were standing about 100 feet in on Devonwood Drive looking south towards Route 4 intersection. That is where the dry well is located underneath that puddle. To the left, you can see a very large puddle that maximum crosses over to the yellow line on the incoming lane or northbound lane of Devonwood Drive. What we're proposing to do, is actually the second picture of the day. I took one where you can see the water was laying out almost to center line. It did not come out that great, and I went back in the morning about 10-ish and took that picture. So, and obviously these are the best conditions we have in the wintertime. Icing, freezing, thawing, a snow mound against that roadside there is just going to trap that water in place. So what we're proposing to do is if you were standing on Route 4 looking north down Devonwood Drive, on the right-hand side, we would install a catch basin along the curb line. This would be a flat-top catch basin or a CL. Devonwood Drive is slated to be repaved as soon as we are allowed to start paving with the situation we have now. So any regrading can be done at that time to create a positive drainage. Right now, they're going to be set just a hair below the existing pavement elevation to catch any runoff in water. From that new basin, we'll be laying an 8-inch sewer line, SDR 35 piece of PVC across the intersection to a new location of a basin on the left-hand side or the westerly side, Devonwood Drive, and from there, running in a northerly direction to the existing dry well that's located just off the west side of Devonwood Drive. At that point, we're going to allow that water to raise up and over the top of that catch basin and then flow in a northerly direction along the west side of Devonwood Drive, down that existing swale, which will be regraded. Preliminary shots show the most of about a 6 to 8 inch cut in some of the areas where we've got some berms that kick out from the existing conditions, but that'll be straightened out and regraded. The length of that, which is approximately 500 feet, to an existing culvert that flows underneath Devonwood Drive, running in a westerly. It runs east to west. It drains to the east. Right now, the inlet side is about half full of sediment, so the east side is totally full of sediment. So we're creating a ponding condition on the west side. And what we're hoping to do is, in future, just get the water out of the intersection, obviously, let it slowly recede into that dry well to take as much as possible, and then it would basically overflow itself or daylight itself down that existing swale, which will be a grass swale, hopefully flowing back into the drainage system or the underground, and then to the culvert. As you know, in that area, we get a very high water table. It's roughly the elevation of Dunning Lake, which is about a 2 to 3 foot cut from what we've got here now. So we're trying to keep things out of the water, but continuing the daylight and drainage system to make things work.
Do you want to go through the rest of the photos?
Sure. That picture there is if you're just south of Devonwood, of Winding Trails, or the old Gables entrance. That is the culvert on the east side. The white line is the top of the culvert. So you can see where that is buried. It's about a 15-inch RCP. That again is a picture of the pipe is just ahead of that white line. That is on the west side. You can see the sign for Winding Trails just to the north there. That is what we will be swaling to and cleaning that culvert out, so it'll take the water from the west, basically off the farm field. There's a small detention area in there in the corner, which is the old Winding Trails Road, and it will also pick up the water coming from Route 4 eventually, if it exceeds the swale through there, and so we'll have an area to daylight. That again is standing on the west side, looking east across Devonwood Drive. And that is the swale if you're standing at the culvert looking south towards Route 4. You can see where it fluctuates a little bit, which picks up in elevation. That'll be straightened out. Not a whole lot of grading. We're talking maybe 6 inches, 8 inches max at the very top of the photo where it kicks out, where there's a couple of pine trees that have peed. No, I'm not planning on taking any trees out with this. We may be doing a little trimming of some invasives and some undergrowth on more towards that Route 4 end, but that picture right there is basically just going to be straightening out and doing some minor cuts to create a positive swell. That area there will probably be trimmed back a little bit to create a more defined slope and swale that would run down the grass line there. And basically that's all invasives and low-lying vegetation.
Is that the dry?
The dry well is actually at the very bottom of the picture, right by the post.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I was standing on it when I took that picture.
Gotcha, okay. Oh, there it is.
That's the dry well there. So you can see it basically overtops, it picks up about 8 inches just outside that catch basin, which creates that puddle before it starts to go north. What we want to do is take that out and create a positive slope going all the way to the north. And that's an existing condition. As you can see, the white arrows are approximately the pipe line that we would install new pipe. And at that point, we can actually get rid of that stone and just seed it in. That's a crossing from west to east, across Devonwood Drive. And that is east to west.
Who knows, we looked at already. Okay.
So, if there's any questions, I'll answer those as best we can.
We'll start in order with Rich.
Rich Berlandi, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Emily?
I do not, in fact. I think it's very thorough. I think seems reasonable to me.
Dave?
I think you said that the new swale was going to be grassed, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's good. Nothing else.
Okay. Robert?
Thanks, Scott, for the thorough presentation. It looks like it's work that's necessary for public safety and maintenance, so as long as you work with Shannon on the normal scheduling and soil and erosion control, I don't have any concerns. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Mark?
No questions.
Ned?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what you were saying. Is that pond, the large puddle that's farther off the road, is that because the dry well is full, or is that what happened?
The day prior to this, the water was down about 30 inches inside that dry well. And that, probably from the lower part of that picture, in about 8 feet, the dry well is underneath that puddle.
So then what is feeding the two culverts that are entering into the swale?
Down at the winding trails end?
Yeah.
There's a small area which was the old winding trails road. Before if you turn into winding trails, it would again be on your left side. There's a very small retaining area in there. There's a break through the berm, and basically whatever comes off the farm field that way and off the old Devon or off the old winding trails road would travel north. There's very slight berm in between these two roads, which is on Devonwood's property.
And so where you're gonna put the pipe in the stone, beneath the existing stone, that you won't need the stone there anymore, because
Correct. It'll be
it'll
a lawn area and pipe to that dry well. The dry well will end up daylighting.
All right, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Guy?
No,
Wait,
I think it was.
You forgot Jay.
I'm sorry, Jay.
That's okay. I guess I'm forgettable, but, so, as I've said many times, I actually do have two, and these are curiosity things, and I guess these come under my, the part of my education and about these things. I'm looking at these pictures. The pictures are very self-explanatory. I'm wondering if this is similar at all to the work that you're going to be doing on Mountain Spring. It looks like they're a little bit further off the road than the work you're doing on Mountain Spring, but it seems kind of similar to me. And then the other question I have was, have you had a history of this happening, or is this something new that you're addressing because of the pictures that we're seeing? Those are my two questions.
To answer your question, basically, we're on hold with all our paving projects.
Yeah, I know. I know. It looks similar to Mountain Spring to me, and maybe I'm wrong.
Slated was to finish Devonwood Drive with an overlay. So we are going to be going in there and doing our preparation for paving in case we get the go ahead. I don't want to be starting prep at that time. This is part of that situation. I want to get this out of the way. It is a safety issue at this point in time. It's preliminary to paving, so it's something that needs to get done.
I mean, is the reason for doing this similar to the reason that you're eventually, hopefully, going to be doing the work on Mountain Spring?
Well, the scope of work's a little different because Mountain Spring was failing head walls. So those failing head walls had to be removed and then the pipes extended. There was some cleaning of some of those pipes on Mountain Spring. So to the extent that the culvert inlet and cleaning, there's some overlap there. But other than that, they are different, and it's similar in that it's maintenance work, but the scope of work is unique to each location.
Okay, I mean, this just kind of helps me kind of have a framework of these types of projects, which is why I'm asking. And then the other thing is, and then I'm done, is I'm just curious if, this area's had this experience before, with that kind of overflow or whatever you want to call it.
The ponding's been going on for
Ponding's been going on for quite a while.
a while.
It did used to drain off, but with the traffic that comes around the corner, it starts to push, the tires will hug the corner, it'll start to push up, and will create a berm along the edge of the existing road in the lawn area, so it doesn't have a chance to actually leach off as quickly as possible. This, we want to gather that water. Again, we'll send it to the dry well where it was initially supposed to go. If it bleeds out there, it's got a chance to. If not, it will daylight and flow above ground down to this culvert.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. And Shannon.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Dan.
I just want to say that, yeah, going winding trails and taking my kids as friends out to Devonwood, I see this condition quite often. It does happen whenever there's a good rain.
Do I get to talk?
Yes, you
Yes,
do.
go ahead, guys. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Guy.
That's okay. I thought it was a well-done presentation, and I don't have any concerns.
This is Bob. I've got a couple of questions. The proposed catch basins, are they actually going in the roadway, or are they going to be just off the edge of the roadway?
No, we're gonna put them in the roadway for two reasons. One is I have utilities that run down the east side of Devonwood directly behind the curb line. Secondly, I want to have them in the roadway so we can clean them off with the plow in the wintertime, so they're accessible.
Okay. Is there any proposed work to be done in the dry well?
Dry well will be cleaned out. We'll get that backed out, and obviously we'll be running into it with a 8-inch piece of PVC from the south.
Okay. And then my final question, I don't remember what you call the truck, but it's when you guys cleaned out the pipes in my neighbor's yard from the street. I think it was like a high pressure water jet was used.
It's the sewer department's back.
To blow the dirt out?
Yes.
And what are you going to do for erosion control with that? Because as you can see from the pipes, there's a lot of muck that's in the pipes.
Yeah, that I've got to get in there initially with a backhoe and clean out in front of each pipe. The last thing we will do is get the back truck in there and route that sediment that's in that pipe to clear it out. On the downstream side, we can put some erosion control in there to catch that water so it doesn't run further to the east, and that will be removed as it comes out of the pipe. But that we can catch any water that is in the cleaning process.
Okay.
And probably at that time, do you want a plunge pool on each side of that for further maintenance down the road?
Am I asking that?
I'm asking you if that's what you would like.
I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I've seen what happens when you put that high pressure water in the pipes and where the dirt goes. I just wanted to make sure that it was controlled so that it wasn't disturbing wetlands and stuff. So, that's it on my questions. Anybody else have anything they want to go back on?
Nope.
So I guess one of the issues that we need to make a determination on is whether or not this is an activity that's permitted as of right. I'm willing to listen to what folks have to say. I've got my opinion, but I'll hold off on it. I guess, you want to start with Rich again? We'll just keep going in order.
Yeah, this is Rich. My kind of view is that this is maintenance of the road. That's it.
Okay. All right, Emily?
This feels to me like appropriate maintenance. It feels like there's not anything sufficiently new construction need to need anything from us.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's
looks like it's maintenance relating to existing drainage pipes as in the regs. The new pipe is under the road, so that's kind of not a big deal, so I would let it go.
Robert?
Yeah, I would agree. My opening comments, I had said I viewed it as a public safety maintenance activity. I like the process that it was presented to the commission, but I would view it as an as of right under the regs.
Mark?
I agree, it's standard maintenance.
Ned?
Yeah, I think it's just me.
Jay?
Yeah, I agree.
Guy?
I agree.
I agree as well. I just think it's routine maintenance and trying to correct a problem that's sort of built up over time. So, do we need to make a motion on that, Shannon?
Yes, please, but we can all just vote at once. A motion, a second, and then we don't have to do a roll call vote.
Correct. So would somebody like to make that motion?
Dave will make the motion.
I'll second.
Those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? I'm assuming it went through clean.
It sounds that way.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Scott.
Thank you, and everybody stay safe.
You too.
Thanks, Scott. You too.
Oh, so we're not taking an application.
No. No, but the thing that was nice is by at least coming here and explaining it, we can make a determination on it. Next up is Timothy Corlett. Is he back from child duty?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay.
I guarantee that you may not hear kids in the background at some point.
Okay. So Timothy, you're up. You can go ahead and discuss what you'd like to do. I have all of your documents, so the site plan, the spot grades, and in a separate file I have the photos that were taken and that were shared with you in the email. So you go ahead, I'll leave it up at the site plan, and then if you'd like me to scroll to anything else, I can do that at your request.
Okay, thanks, Shannon.
You're welcome.
Yes, so what my wife and I are hoping to be able to do is take down our existing garage, which was built sometime around 1940. There's structural issues, and then also the physical size of it and the way it's laid out with its garage door openings make it extremely difficult to have the garage function for vehicle storage, number one, and any type of kid storage. I mean, really, it right now it functions as kid storage, but the vehicle storage is probably the most desirable for us. So our proposal is to, and you can see on the plan that we're looking at here, our current garage is roughly 18. So where I have it wanting to be 22 feet wide, where cars would pull in, it is currently 18 feet wide by 20 feet deep. And there is a attached 7-foot by 12-foot shed that is kind of like just a little, it is attached, and it has its own foundation kind of pinned into the garage foundation. So we would like to remove the shed, and let me backtrack a little bit. My initial hope was to keep the westerly wall, which is bordering the brook, and also the northern wall, which is where we would pull cars into. But I have done a little hand digging up against the foundation, and I've discovered that it's only about, I would say, 18 to 20 inches below grade. And it certainly is not a very clean footing area that the walls are poured on. There's several cracks in it throughout the years. And basically it led me to not feel comfortable in reusing any part of the existing foundation. So bringing me to that conclusion that I have to, or would like to, do a whole new foundation for this structure. I want to make it as usable for our family's needs. You know, my wife and I and 3 kids. We have a minivan and I have a larger pickup truck. So we don't have small vehicles. We don't have large, but we would like to have the space that a 22 by 24 garage would give us. So again, going back to that aspect that I do need to address the foundation issue. Regardless, if I was to just rebuild it in the exact same size that it is, it wouldn't work for us, number one, size-wise, but I would still be having foundation issues that need serious attention. So in doing a whole new foundation, my proposition is to pull the entire footprint of the garage of another foot away from the brook, the westerly side, and add 2 feet to the back side of it, south side, and 2 feet to the front side of it, to gain to that 22 by 24 footprint. You can see on the scaled out dimensions, we currently actually, you know, on site, when you pull out a tape and you measure the southwest corner, the corner closest to the brook, it is, you know, it's going to be 3 feet, 3.5 feet from that bank edge, which is tight, and it certainly is an area of caution when it comes to excavating. So that is another reason to try and pull it that, you know, extra foot away from the brook, which would give us a little more room, a little more comfort in the digging aspect of it. I think the digging in general will be relatively easy everywhere else. You know, my property is fairly sandy, so I don't foresee any other issues. And certainly the grade all around the garage itself is fairly level. You know, there's no significant, you know, heavy pitches happening into the brook. You know, so, you know, I think that kind of works in our favor as well when it comes to excavation. So, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, being in this meeting, I know kind of the big concern is the safety of the water and the brook itself. So I have every intention of, you know, setting up like a silt sock barrier right along the top embankment. I'm not going to store any of the excavated soil very close to the edge by any means. I have the room to, you know, store it closer to the easterly sides, and also on the driveway itself in portions. So I see it as a doable project, and, you know, provided we don't get you know, tropical downpours for days and days and days, you know, and certainly if that was in the forecast, I would not be starting my digging or my excavation work. But I do think that it's a reasonable project, and certainly to keep the brook safe. So I guess the other thing to note would be elevations. We did have Hodge Survey come out, and they took some site elevations for us. Thank you, Shannon, for scrolling down. The floodway, as it was noted, and maybe Shannon can kind of shine the right terminology and light on this. The floodway was on the FEMA maps, kind of cutting through some of our yard, some of the, close proximity to the garage. And then when Hodge came out and took all the elevations, what they kind of came up with was that our existing garage foundation, which I guess another thing to note is when I, upon approval and if everything goes well, the new foundation, I'm certainly going to keep higher than the existing just from a safety standpoint. But the actual existing foundation of the garage is not, in the floodway itself. It is higher than that. So elevation wise, I think we are safe in that respect. And Shannon, you can correct me if I said something that was not, totally kosher there.
No, I would agree with your statement that the floodway line that shows on the FEMA map crosses through the property, and Hodge did an elevation cert for the house, which would indicate that the floodway line is to the west of the home, and we, at our request, Timothy secured Hodge to grab these additional spot grades that you see here. And with that, in interpolating the elevation between 209 and 208, have determined the floodway is here. And there is no floodplain on this side. So it was floodway, that was it. So it's out of any regulated area from a flood standpoint. So I concur with how you shared that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think I have too much more to add, other than.
Do you want to photos? Do you want to go through the photos?
Oh, sure. Yep. Actually, yeah. Just seeing this photo did bring up something that I wanted to add. So we currently have hemlock trees that were planted along the top of the bank, as you can see. These two that are in the picture are definitely the closest, and they are probably 35 feet tall, and they come over the existing garage. They are very much so in the way of trying to construct a new building, and to be totally honest, they're not the prettiest of trees. So my intention is to take them out, leave the stumps, but cut them, very close to the grade, so that the root system stays in the soil. Eventually it will decompose, but we do want to plant something nicer, probably in the proximity that is directly behind this side of the garage that you see. I don't think I could get anything more than some ground cover to be able to really grow. But as we would kind of be working backwards towards the house, I would like to put some nicer shrubs, possibly a nicer looking tree in place of where some of the other hemlocks are. But again, I know that the root system of these existing hemlocks do hold the bank well, and definitely provide some positive soil conditions for any type of serious erosion that could happen. So any planting that I do, it'll be very precise, as far as the digging. If I need to put in a shrub that has a 2-foot hole that needs to be dug, I'll dig the hole 2 feet and backfill it. If I have to cut out some roots to get it in, then so be it. But, in theory, the new planting should have enough, enough soil and stuff around it to be able to grow and kind of thrive, and eventually overtake the hemlock roots that would be dying out over time. So there will be vegetation that goes back in, but again, the hemlocks themselves do pose an issue in the build, and also probably the longevity of the roof that I put on the new garage. There's quite a bit of moss growing on my existing garage roof, and it is definitely due to the hemlocks more or less growing over that top edge. So that is our intention with how we treat the kind of the finished product of the bank. There's a picture of that is the easterly side. So if you were to continue kind of moving away towards my truck, you would be going up towards West Avon Road. So this is kind of a view from our house, but also from the road itself. And you can see the little attached shed that I was talking about. There are 2 stakes on the ground here. That first stake, yes, the smaller one of the 2, that was kind of our original thought in the garage size without kind of moving the entire foundation the extra foot away from the bank. And the stake to the left is the kind of our final proposed 22 by 24 footprint with moving the entire slab or the entire foundation that extra foot away from the brook. So, I mean, one thing to note, you can see that my truck is parked where it's parked. That is a common parking place for me. On the other side of my truck is our septic tank. Yes, basically right below that shrub. So it would be difficult for me to move that. We thought that taking a foot, away from the brook and moving it that 1 foot would be a good thing, considering the project. It would be difficult for me to continue pushing towards, the truck and the septic tank, because that space would become somewhat unusable or inaccessible for the way my driveway is kind of laid out and how I have to go down and then back into that spot. So I'm guessing you guys can imagine what I'm kind of referring to. So I think that's probably it for that picture. Yep, another picture just kind of showing the brook side of things. Where that shovel is laying is a spot where I just dug up against the foundation and kind of discovered that it was only 18 to 20 inches below grade. Yep, that's good there. This is the very, let's see, southwest corner. This is the corner that is currently, closest to the top bank of the brook. So from this corner, especially we'd be moving, right to left, or I guess we'd be moving towards the West Avon side, which would be left with that corner by a foot. Yep, again, a picture of those hemlocks that we would like to move, leaving the roots. And just one note too, the brook itself, Yeah, the brook itself between my house and the Hoffmans here, that is probably one of the wider sections, that probably the widest section along our property line. And you know, the Hoffmans, their bank is pretty pretty gradual, I would say. More so than ours. Ours is a little steeper coming off. So, you know, it is extremely rare that I have ever seen the water coming up to I would say a threatening standpoint. My wife and I, we've been here 10 years, and it was either the second or third year that we were here. There was a spring that, it was right around the time when the snow was thawing out of the ground, and we had a couple days straight of some significant rain. And further north on our property, the brook did kind of come up into the wood line a little bit. Then as it continued to go downstream, it certainly was, all the water was within its banks. It didn't come up or above anything, not by the house, not by the garage. But it, and at that point, that same storm, parts of Route 4 were flooded over, and it was a pretty significant rain and thawing event. So I feel comfortable, with the elevations that we have and the the way things are with the brook from that standpoint. So again, just to kind of wrap up, I guess what I'm saying, we feel comfortable that the garage is safe to safe to invest the money into to rebuild it and make it usable for us. As you can kind of see, again, looking at this plan, there's not really another place I could put a garage. If I were to put it directly behind the house, number one, it wouldn't, I don't have as much room as I do with its current location. So the garage would end up being smaller. And also it would cut off my entire backyard access, which is a very focal point for our family. I don't see that as a realistic possibility. So I am trying to kind of make the best of the current, location, so that it can work for us. And also, we love the brook and we certainly care for it. So I'll take every precaution I have to make sure that the build and the maintenance, from here on out is safe for it, and safe for us. So I think that's really all I need to say. But I'm happy to answer any questions. So I'll close with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, I guess we'll stay in the same order. So Rich, do you have any questions?
Oh, no, I don't.
Emily?
I'm kind of formulating mine, so if we could pass on me in return, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Dave?
I have a couple of questions. You were talking about the existing foundation being a problem, and are you going to remove the existing foundation? Because on page 7 of the application, it says you're going to pour the new foundation, the new over the old.
So that is just referring to the floor itself. Yes. So I will be removing the west wall. My intention is to cut the floor, maybe 2 or 3 feet in from where in from its foundation.
Okay, I get it now.
Okay. Yeah.
I was confused about that.
Yep. and, pour my new walls and then leave the slab, the existing floor slab, and just pour over the top of that.
Oh, okay.
That was, kind of in my comment about, in doing the new foundation, things will be higher. That is another aspect of it, that, in pouring, a 4-inch concrete floor over the existing floor, theoretically that the lowest point of my foundation now is actually 4 inches higher than the current.
Okay. It's hard to, from the photos, to see what the stream bank at that location looks like, but it looks like it's pretty rocky, and I'm guessing you don't have no erosion problems on that stream bank, particularly since it's on like the inside of the curve.
Correct.
That's great.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So I do, I'll be totally honest. With heavy rains, we do get a lot of runoff coming down our driveway, and a lot of that comes off of the road itself. West Avon Road coming from like Farmington Woods is all just downhill.
Right.
There's no from the kind of light curve from the club.
They're only on, there's 4 projects, and they're only on the second one.
Sorry.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to add that we do get a fair amount of water that comes off the road onto our driveway. So in extremely heavy rains, our driveway kind of looks like it's shedding quite a bit of water down towards the stream. But it, kind of gets to the, off the asphalt, just say, there, it dissipates well. There's no, strong ruts that have happened. So it certainly does, it never wraps itself all the way around to like that far west corner that is the tightest area.
Okay, and on the I had another question on the downspouts from the roof. Where, under existing conditions, where does those drain to, and what's proposed for the new garage?
Good question. So the current downspout drains and takes a elbow, and it just dumps onto our garage, or excuse me, onto the driveway in the front. The back currently does not have a gutter to it, so everything just sheds off the roof and hits the ground. How many you need to leave, please? The proposed build, I would like to have gutters on, and in the roof itself, the eaves will be turned 90 degrees to what they are now. So right now, my eave ends are facing the driveway, and then, or I should say, on the north and the south side. The ends of the roof will be on the east and the west side. I will have a downspout on the east side that drains off and towards where my truck was parked, and essentially that is just going to dissipate into that area. I am open to a suggestion on what you would like me to do for the brook side, the westerly side. So whatever you guys feel is the most appropriate for directing that water, I will do. So
I guess some way to get it into the ground as opposed to directly into the brook.
Okay.
Maybe doing something on the northwest corner instead of the southwest corner, so you're further away from the brook.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe some sort of a dry well situation or something like that.
Okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to putting it off that northwest corner.
Yeah.
And, essentially where the downspout comes now is the northwest corner. And, I haven't, again, there's no significant ruts or erosion that's happened.
Okay.
Currently. So, if
I guess if it works now, it should work in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the square footage of the roof isn't significantly bigger, so it's not going to be significantly more water. So.
Okay.
And if we felt that a dry well was necessary, I would probably then put it to the. I would have to dig it, obviously, and kind of be safe with things. But I would think putting it to the south, south end of the garage, have the downspout come off of the southwest corner, go into an underground pipe, and almost approximately where that 22-foot mark is on the plan that we, just above Shannon's little hand there.
Yeah.
I could see a dry well working in that area if it was piped to that. Again, the lot is extremely sandy, so it would dissipate pretty well, I would think.
Yeah, I don't have enough expertise to make a sound recommendation, but I guess if the existing seems to work, it doesn't seem like it will be that bad to recreate that.
Right.
I did have a question about the flood issue, because the elevation certificate says it's 209.1, and a couple of the spot elevations are a little bit under that on the east side of the garage.
Correct. So the 209.1 has to do with where the elevation is in relation to the house. So when you look at the brook and the floodway, the elevation contour for 209 runs roughly through the top quarter of the driveway, and the elevation for 208, the floodway elevation 208, runs back here at the rear end of the property. So the surveyor estimated the flood elevation at 209.1 immediately adjacent to the house, and the elevation, I got the flood cert here, so 209.1, and the elevations adjacent to the house are at 209.8, 210.6 is the floor. The basement, the 205 that you're seeing, is the basement elevations for the home. So, but the actual ground elevation, highest adjacent grade adjacent to the home is, lowest adjacent grade is 209, highest is 216. So the 209 is the actual grade, and the FEMA flood elevation grade at the house is 209.1. So there's 0.7 of a foot higher adjacent grade to the house. I use the same interpolation when you come down here at the garage. Like I said, the 208 here and the 209 is running here. So this, the flood elevation at the front end of the garage is roughly 208.8, and at the back end of the garage, 208.7. So we don't have as much freeboard from a ground elevation standpoint at the back, but the slab elevation of the garage is 209.4. That's the existing elevation of the slab and top of foundation. So there's plenty of freeboard, and there isn't an issue with respect to the floodway. So the floodway line is actually running somewhere along the top of bank, at times maybe a few feet off the top of bank. but it is not into the structures.
Okay. Oh, so all of these figures are not, those are the flood figures, not the ground figures.
No, these are the actual on-the-ground elevations. So those are on-the-ground elevations. So this 2083 is down
Okay,
off the bank. Yeah, so, but when you compare them to the interpolated elevations, these spot grades are higher than the interpolated flood elevation by at one point only by a tenth or 2/10 of a foot.
Yeah.
But
Like
again, the slab, the garage slab is about 8/10 of a foot.
Okay. So that the 2087s are right about at exactly where they should be, and the 2089 is as well. Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked at that in detail because we needed to understand if there were additional permits needed with TPZ, and there will not be.
Okay. I was asking because in my old job, if anybody was building something in the floodway, it was an extremely big deal. Because if you build something that causes a rise in elevation of 1/100th of a foot, you're in trouble.
Understood.
Okay.
We got it, which is why we asked for the spot grades to be taken.
Very good. I guess my last question was, I guess as part of your write-up, Shannon, you said a silt sock at the top of the bank.
Yes.
Maybe a fence and a sock.
So the problem with the fence is it's all rock. That bank is all rock, and so we can put like a construction fence to make sure that things don't blow in, or we could use a silt fence, but I don't want it towed in because we're going to be doing more damage at the top of bank than is helpful.
Okay.
So that's why I was recommending the silt sock. I don't want anything towed in or any excavation going on at the top of that bank.
Yep, that makes sense as well. Okay. I guess I'm done for now.
Okay, Robert?
Overall, I don't have significant concern with the replacement of the garage and recognizing that all of the activity is going to be within the 150-foot regulated area. I do think looking at anything that's going to disturb the bank is critically important. So while you talked about removing the hemlocks, if the board decides to go in that direction, I would say the stumps absolutely should remain for the reasons that you said. The root system will help stabilize the bank, but I would actually prefer that the trees remain. The hemlocks don't appear to be close to their mature age. I recognize they're creating some shading issues, but I think the bank stabilization that those hemlocks are providing is important, but also the shading of Roaring Brook that they provide is important as well. When you remove trees that overlook a waterway, it does help contribute to raise the temperature of that water, which is going to flow into the Farmington River, which is of concern for the agents, for the commission. So I would favor, if you wanted to have an arborist look at the trees and see if you could trim back some of the branches on the garage side and still keep the trees healthy. That may help address some of the concern you have about the shading of the garage and the moss that will grow. But I do think it's important to leave the trees for stabilization of the bank and also for shading purposes. On the discussion for what to do with the water coming off of the garage, I would agree that if you can have a drywall system, that's going to be preferred to get the water into the ground versus into Roaring Brook. And I know we talked a little bit about maybe discharging where your truck is. I think you have to be a little careful about where your leaching field is, because you may not want to be introducing more water where your septic system is, because that could just be setting up for some additional problems down the road. So I think the area that you're working, given the proximity to Roaring Brook, is going to be really important, that should the construction project move forward, you work closely with town staff to make sure that any potential impact is minimized during the construction period. And that concludes my comments.
Can I say something just in regards to the hemlocks?
Sure.
So I do have a, I guess not a licensed arborist friend, but a highly qualified horticulturist friend that has pointed out all of my hemlocks have what's called woolly indulgia. It's a kind of a bacterial disease on the hemlocks themselves that without pesticide and insecticide treatment, it doesn't just go away. And I've neglected doing that because of the proximity of the brook. I don't spray chemicals. I don't do chemicals on my yard. I do organic fertilizer on some of the shrubs, but nothing in any close proximity to the brook do I use chemicals for vegetation. So you did, kind of say that they're, not be the prettiest, which is true, but it also is true that they have this disease on them, which eventually will kill them off. It takes a while, but it is true that it will kill them off. So they have not reached their mature age, which is true. And another point to add, just in referencing shading, across the brook, both the Hoffmans and Zacchio property, which is not owned by Zacchios anymore, they have some extremely large maple trees, which provide a significant amount of shade, especially in the hotter months. So I do understand what you're saying with, in removing some of the hemlocks, it may, shine or let some more rays shine on the brook itself. But they really are not that healthy of trees. And they do not have, they do not have a significant amount of, coverage. They're pretty thin, pretty bare. So that's the only thing I'll say about the hemlocks.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. I've got a thought and a compromise, but
That's all I have.
I'd like to try to get through all the commission members, so we can hear everyone's comments.
Hey, Mark?
Yeah, it was, I know the brook you're talking about. I was just wondering if there was a time when when you would think about doing the construction, which would minimize the impact of any potential damage to the brook. But if I remember that brook, and I know it is, it's pretty active at most all times, isn't it? That's my question.
It is, it's directly affected
Tim,
by,
do you know, from a low flow
rain,
standpoint, does it,
the flow is definitely the least in the summertime. If we get a torrential downpour or heavy thunderstorm, it gets very active for maybe a day into the next day. But given that summer is kind of typically the drier months, my hope was to start the construction in like July or August. When the brook is at its slowest point, because those months are definitely the slowest in volume.
Okay, and it sounds like you are concerned about the brook, but I think maybe one of the things, if we to prove this project, is to make sure we're careful, we limit what is stored in the garage other than, say, cars, maybe sounds like you're trying to keep fertilizers or anything that might be hazardous to the brook, away from it. So I would, maybe in the future tense, we would be like saying, okay, we like to limit what you may store in the garage that might leach potentially into the brook. That's all I have to say.
Yep. No. I understand. Yep.
Ned?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Bob on the hemlock trees. I think the root balls are doing a lot to help hold that together, but I understand if they're diseased, and that's another problem. I wanted to confirm that there's no retaining wall on that stream, right? That it's just slope and stone to the homeowner?
Correct.
Okay. I was curious, when you dug your hole, did you encounter any groundwater? That hole that you dug to look at the bottom of the foundation?
Nope. None whatsoever. It was very dry.
And the idea that was proposed about the dry well to the rear of the garage, if your septic tank is on the other side of your truck, where you park your truck, is the leach field like anywhere behind the garage?
So my understanding is that the leach fields take a straight, kind of a straight line behind the septic tank. I have not done any investigating to figure out exactly where those leach fields are, but my understanding is that they come off the back of the septic tank and run basically parallel with West Avon Road, which to me makes sense. When we first moved in, directly behind the garage was, not significant trees, but there was heavier vegetation directly behind the garage, and there was always kind of this longer avenue, basically like where my truck is parked, that ran parallel with West Avon Road.
Okay, so if they're coming off the back of the septic tank and then in parallel to the road, then you might have room behind the garage for a dry well. And that would be preferable than a straight drain to the brook. But we could discuss that a little more with you. And
okay.
That's all I had.
Jay?
So I don't have any, can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
You're good. Yep, you're good.
Okay. So I don't have any question, but I do, and this is something I haven't had to do in a while. I do have kind of a full disclosure thing, and I don't, because there's a name involved in this that I know very, very well. I'm related to through marriage. I don't think it prevents me from making a decision, but I want to put it out there. Adam Hoffman, the surveyor, I had a feeling, because I saw the name Hodge, Adam Hoffman is married to Nancy, my first wife that passed away, sister. So he's like my brother-in-law. I just want to put that out there. Again, I don't think, unless someone tells me differently, I don't think that prevents me from making a decision, but I didn't want to pass this without at least mentioning that.
Do you have a financial interest in his business?
Not at all. Not at all. That's why I say I don't think it's an issue, but I just wanted to put it out there so that you were aware that I know who that is. I know him very well. I've known him for 40 years. He's also a very good surveyor. So unless someone tells me that's a conflict, then I don't think it is. I just wanted to mention it. Otherwise, I have no questions.
Okay. Guy?
I too am concerned about the trees, and cutting them down and replacing it with ground cover is not the same thing. I mean, you can put a different tree there to help do the same thing that they're doing, if that's a problem. The other thing I have is there any way to move that garage towards West Avon Road more than a foot? I mean, it seems like it has you have more area there that you could use to move that away. And the other thing is, on one of your photographs, it looks like there's a pile of ladders and stuff from the sites that goes right to the river. And that's not a good thing either. Pardon?
So I'm a
That's one where,
contractor by trade. I do have
do you have
ladders.
a
I do
pile
have,
of ladders that go right to the water?
I have a,
It's not this photo, it's a,
they don't, I mean,
it's just the one.
they don't go
before-
into the water if that,
Right there, this one. Well,
Yeah,
all right,
it's
they
not,
go right over the
Guy, I've
water.
been on
and
the
water's
property,
right-
yeah, Guy, I've been on the property twice. No, they do not, Guy, I've been to the property twice, they do not go to the top of bank. They're off the top of bank, and it's, all the material is contained, and there is no raw material. There's no chemicals, there's no loose material, it's some equipment, and that's the extent of it.
Is
And
Roaring
it does
Brook
not go right up to the top of bank.
Is it a cold water stream? Roaring
I
Brook?
don't know.
it gets,
I'd like to know that.
I mean, it does warm up in the summertime, you know, to the
So
point
that
where
it's-
you would
it's
be in
not-
it, you would be
It's not the
comfortable.
water temperature, it's the use of, in other words, do they have trout in Roaring Brook?
I don't know. There are fish in the brook. I've certainly seen them. My daughter's in the farm. I have not seen a good sized trout in there. And, I mean, I know what a trout looks like. And I've not seen, at least in my area. So I can't
Reason I
answer
ask
that
is
completely.
that cold water brook needs that tree cover to keep the water cold. And you're cutting those trees down without a replacement will not help that.
You know, that was not something I had ever considered, but I'm happy to replace, you know, replace with a variety of a tree that would get, you know, to a shading size,
Right.
we'll just say. So again, I do, as I had mentioned, my intention was to leave the roots in the ground for, you know, erosion control and to help maintain the bank itself. I was not considering the shade end of it. But if you guys want me to put something back, then I certainly will. I don't mind, you know, I don't mind if it comes down to it and we have to leave the hemlocks and just trim them back, then so be it. But I do think down the road, I will be, you know, faced with the I'm not going to call it a hardship, but I will be faced with the aspect of removing the trees down the road, you know, due to disease and the fact that I'm not going to treat it with an insecticide that close to the brook. So, you know, so again, if you guys are more comfortable with me leaving the hemlocks and just trimming them back, then that's fine. If you're okay with me removing them and replanting a tree that will eventually shade the brook, that would be my preference.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay.
Emily, it's your turn.
You didn't forget me. You didn't forget me.
Oh,
You're the best. Honestly, I think it was you, Dave, asking about the silt fence. Was that correct? Was that you, Dave?
Yeah,
That was actually, I was trying to come up with what I was wondering about it, and I think everything I had to say got covered there, actually. I'm always interested in silt fences. That was it. We hit it.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Ned had something else to add if you want to.
I just, to Guy's comment about the fish, I know, I'm very familiar with the Route 4 bridge that was just constructed, just down the street a little bit. And then about past the outlet of the Route 4 bridge, there's a drop off. And that, so I don't think you'd get Farmington River fish coming up that stream.
It's coming down.
I would,
Comment.
Well, if they go up, they typically travel in both directions. It's generally not a one direction,
That's true.
right? So, okay.
I've just gone on to the DEP website that has something called the Cold Water Stream Habitat Map.
That's
And
it.
Roaring Brook is not shown. There's a little application that you can zoom in. And Roaring Brook is not shown as a cold water habitat stream.
Thank you, Dave. So, Mr. Hannon, I think it's your turn.
I've got a question and I guess a couple of comments. I agree with some of my other colleagues tonight where I think I would prefer to see some type of a dry well put in to deal with the runoff from the garage roof. The other thing I'm wondering is whether or not being this close to the brook might not be a bad idea to maybe epoxy the floor to seal it so that there's no leaking through any concrete base. My general question, this may tie in with something you were talking about, Shannon, is I'm almost wondering if it would be advisable to get some type of a recommendation from an arborist in terms of the status of the trees now. Because I got to tell you, it's a whole lot easier to take the trees down if the garage is down than it is if a new garage goes up, and you've got to try to be very careful taking the trees down after that point in time.
correct.
So
Okay.
that's kind of where I'm at. If I had any other questions, they've been asked by others. I do think that it's very important to maintain like the silt stock around the property, top of slope. That I think is going to be critical. And eventually, if this goes forward, that's going to be something that really needs to be worked out very closely with the town staff. So on
can
the, Sure.
I was going to say, can I put my two thoughts on this? Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 4 hemlock trees total. So there's 1, 2, 3, and I think there's one behind where this photo is taken. There's the 3 here. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
I think you can see the base of the other one.
Okay, so this is 4 over here,
Well, no, that's actually part of that third one.
this one. So there's one behind me, right? We're behind
Oh,
the person taking the photo.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So so there's 1, 2, 3 that are immediately impacted by the garage. And this third one, this last one, I'm trying to get it different. So I guess what I'm wondering, is it possible for us to do this in stages, in a compromise, so that we have some mature growth and some new growth, and let the trees that are immediately contiguous to the garage come out now, with the intent that there will be replanting of an evergreen or deciduous type tree that will add shade. Let that go for a year or two, and then these other trees that are not immediately adjacent to the garage can come out in like 2 or 3 years once the new trees started to mature and are starting to provide shade, so that we do this in a rotation, so we don't get rid of all the mature trees at once, but at the same time, it's going to let you get rid of what you need to in order to get the garage in immediately, so there's not construction issues and roof issues, but we still have the shade that's going to get provided for the stream. Any thoughts on that approach? Brief thoughts on that approach?
I'm fine with it.
Good idea.
Fine with me.
Sounds fine to me too.
I love an
Okay.
abundance of caution. I love caution, yeah.
This is Robert, I would agree, but I'd like to see a little bit of a longer time because to get the new trees in, as you know, sometimes 2 or 3 years isn't enough to get them to actually take well. So I'd probably do it 5 years at minimum before the other trees come out.
Okay,
Seems okay to me too.
all right. Tim, can you live with that compromise?
Certainly. I will make a confession because again, I'm not trying to be shady or not following the rules. I did on, I believe it was Saturday morning, I did not take this entire grouping down, but I did take one of the hemlocks down. I had the time to make a run to Tungus Mead to dump off the brush, so I have taken one of the hemlocks down that we are actively looking at on this photo. The stump is still there, but the tree itself is gone. And I don't mind. Again, I didn't know that these were the shade aspect was such a consideration. To me, it was always a health issue with the trees, you know, and also the aspect of them growing significantly close to the garage. I am totally fine with leaving some and replacing as years go on. I'm also fine with having an arborist come out and look at them to, you know, kind of make that determination of, you know, these are unhealthy trees. But again, so to answer your question, I am certainly willing to compromise by leaving some, and I'm also willing to have someone come out and look at them to, you know, to give a professional opinion on the overall health of the trees.
Okay. All right.
So are we at the point where we need to make a determination whether this is something that's permitted as of right, or are we going to accept the application?
Yes, we're at that point,
I
and
think
it's
it
open
requires an
for
application.
commission discussion.
This is Robert.
I was
Requires an
thinking the
application
same thing.
for
It
not
seems
just
like
replacing
significant
damaged
work
structure.
and
There's a lot of
yeah, normal maintenance.
Agree at
Okay.
revocation.
Okay, so the gist I'm getting is that we feel as though an application is appropriate, which one has been submitted,
Yep,
so we need to make a motion to accept it?
correct.
I make a motion to accept the
So
application.
moved, Robert.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Nope, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, so then this will be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Correct. So
Any
it's
plans?
just
You want to do a significance, insignificant?
I would like to do a this is action, I would like to do a site walk, and maybe we would do it at that time.
Well,
This is
that's-
Robert. I agree with that.
This is Jay. I agree too.
Dave
I
likes,
second that motion.
Okay, so I will talk with Tim offline to get a couple of dates and times, because we've got limited, one, there's limited area, and two, we can't all congregate at their home given the current situation. So we're gonna have to do a couple of dates and times for a site walk. I will coordinate with Tim to find out what's convenient for for him and his family. And then I'll put the email out with available dates and times. I'll try to get at least one evening and one Saturday or Sunday morning, to try to accommodate schedules for folks. And I will get an email out so that we can get that done before June 3rd.
Okay.
Or June, I think it's June 3rd.
June 3rd, I think.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Shannon, this is Robert. Given the time of year, we've got plenty of daylight. If it's easier for you and if it's easier for Tim, we could always maybe look at one night and just sort of stagger the times, have one group there at 5, another group there at 6, one at 6, one at 7, something like that.
We could, there's young children involved, Robert, so we're gonna have to kind of work through that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
there's a couple of logistical things to work through. So I'll chat with him and get a couple of times that are gonna be convenient.
Thank you.
Yep. So with respect to additional information for the next meeting so that we can be productive, I'm thinking if we can obtain it and there's definitive information from Farmington Valley Health about the septic system, that might be helpful. Discussion for, have him look in further about the dry well and the roof leaders, and maybe some additional information about the hemlock trees and or trees that he would consider replanting. Did I hit everything? Is there anything else anyone would like to see from the applicant for the next meeting?
I think you covered it all.
Okie doke. All righty, we're all set.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Timothy, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Okie dokie. All right,
Jack Douglas,
Jack,
our Eagle Scout project.
our Eagle Scout project. You are up, Jack. Are you, you're with us here, I hope?
Yep, I'm here.
Good.
All right, so Jack, I have the map up for your project. You can introduce yourself, explain what you'd like to do so the commission understands what you're doing and where this is located. And then if you need me to scroll to any of the other pictures, perhaps you can run through this and describe the trail, and then we can share the photos. And I'm happy to move this. This is the exact same version that I had emailed to you. So we can scroll through as you're ready, okay?
All right. So I'm Jack Douglas. I'm a Boy Scout from Troop 170. My plan is to fix up the trail behind West District School. There's two major parts to it. One is fixing the sign in the front, and the other is to reroute the section of the trail. Let's see. On the map, you can see there's an arrow. The arrow points where the new reroute of the trail will be. The dashed line on the upper section of the map is where it used to be. Towards the end of that section, there's a very steep staircase with lots of rotted steps and metal rebarb sticking out of the ground. So the goal of my project was to reroute the trail around that down the ridge line, so it's a little bit safer for the kids to walk. Towards the end of the trail near the black dot, it meets back up with the walking trail behind the school. Going along that paved trail, there's a little stream. It is on the opposite side of the trail from where this new reroute would meet up. If you want to go to the picture of the sign, it was very hard to figure out what that said the first time I tried looking at it. So that was an immediately a big sign that I needed to fix it for my project. And if you want to scroll down to the next photos. That's the staircase. It's a lot steeper than it looks in the photo. And a lot of those are starting to rot apart. And some of them are thrown off to the side of the trail. If you want to go down one more. Here's another picture of a lot of them are kind of like this, where they're starting to rot through. And if you want to go down to the last photo. That's a picture of another one that's thrown off to the side. In the middle of the picture, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some metal rebar sticking out of the ground somewhere in there, 3 or 4 inches up in the air. So because the point of this project is to reroute it for the forest school, which is a school for the 4th graders to walk through and learn about the outdoors. The teacher I was working with decided that that was going to be a safety concern. So I wanted to reroute it away from that. I don't think there's too much else to say, so I think that'll be it.
Okay, thank you.
So sticking with the order that seems to be working. Rich, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Number one, I assume the area that the trail is being rerouted to is flatter than that one section. Is that correct?
Yes, it follows the hill on a more gradual route, trying to stay on the ridge line. So it's definitely a much more gentle downhill.
Okay. The other thing is part of your project either driving those pins that are sticking out of the ground, driving them in so they're flush and they aren't a safety hazard, or removing the rest of those rotted out timbers?
It was not going to be a part of my project. I felt as though moving the trail entirely to the point where nobody should be over there would eliminate the concern that somebody would be hurt on that trail.
Okay. That's all I have.
Emily?
I'm sorry, I had a very brief emergency in my house.
Going to Dave?
Just one question. I was just wondering about the amount of vegetation in the new section. Is it going to be a lot of work clearing a trail, or is it kind of not too overgrown with understory?
The majority of it will just be raking. At most, it might be 2 or 3 very small shrubs that might have to be cut, but can be easily rerouted around those, and it won't interfere with the trail too much.
Very good.
But
I
there's not
assume
that
you're
much, not
you're
that
gonna
much
have-
of a rush.
Is there going to be signage along the way to make sure that people take the new route as opposed to the old route?
Yeah, not many people walked on the trail before, and the teacher who proposed the project to me, they had no idea where the trail went. The blazes on the trail were completely missing, so I will be reblazing the trail entirely, making sure they know how to walk through it, and I will be showing the teacher the route. The kids will not be going on that trail without the teacher, so they will be safely on the trail where they should be.
Very good. Sounds like a good project. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Robert?
Just a comment that I would agree that even though the old path is not going to be heavily used, it would be a nice idea to either remove or drive those existing pins into the ground so they don't pose a hazard for anyone. That's it. And it seems like a nice overall project.
All right.
Mark?
No questions, thank you.
Ed?
Yeah, my kids went to Westchester School, and I've been on this trail many times. The reason it goes up in that direction is because it's, if you look at the geographic map, there's a peak there, and that's, so I think you're still gonna have people who wanna go up to the peak. You might wanna consider that, and then maybe put something to stop people from going down the steep hill, but if, you know, they may wanna go climb up to the peak. But, you know, it's a good project, and I think, you know, it's well deserved.
So the peak there, the trail actually splits off over by there. The part that's rerouting, if you look right at the edge where the line is that separates the properties, by number 8897, the downhill is right there. That's where I'm trying to avoid. So it follows the route just under the number 310, along where she's mousing right now.
Yeah.
So it still hits that peak spot.
So so just to provide a little more explanation, you hit it, Jack, but so the existing trail is coming down here in the steepest part of the contours and lands right here where these property lines meet, and that's pretty much where the paved walking path comes in from these neighborhoods to the school. So he's still basically coming up to the top. He's just rerouting it down the south side for the most part, you know. So whether it's getting right exactly up to the top, I think it's pretty close. I did walk it with him in early March. So, and then this is still a decent trek down, but obviously nothing like it is over here, and it's traversable without the need of any additional steps or water bars or any other element of that nature. Yeah. Any other questions, Ned?
No.
Okay.
Jay?
You actually just covered the two things. My question, Rich asked the question I was going to ask about the steps, and then Shannon, you just touched on, I was then curious that if was the rerouting not going to be as steep so that you wouldn't have to worry about things like steps in the rerouting part of it, and it sounds like you don't. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you got it.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Guy?
I expressed concern too about leaving those pipes sticking out of the ground. Hopefully he can do something with that. Otherwise, it's a good project.
All right, I don't have anything additional to add. So we need to determine if the activity is non-regulated. I believe that's where we're at. Or to determine whether it is or is not an activity that's regulated. So what are people's feelings about this?
Okay. It seems like a maintenance project to me.
I mean, we've had a number of these.
I would say it's okay as is to, consider it, what's the phrase?
Yeah, a non-regulated for outdoor recreation.
That's that's my opinion.
Sorry about my departure. I'm back, and I fully agree. This is a pre-existing thing that's being improved. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it does seem like a B2 permitted as a non-regulated use.
Okay, you guys we want to do a vote, please, like we did for the first application then. I need a motion in a second.
All right, I'll make a motion that this is a non-regulated use statute.
Second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other conversation, comments, questions?
Nope.
None. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? So be it.
Okay, Jack, you are all set. I'll follow up with you tomorrow via email, okay?
Awesome.
Good luck with the
Thank you.
project, Jack.
Yeah, good luck.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4 on the agenda, show cause hearing for cease and desist order for conduct of regulated activity without permit for the property located at 69 Forest Hills Drive. My understanding is there's still a couple of questions on the site, and the applicant, or at least party, has requested an extension until the next meeting. They're having a little bit of trouble trying to coordinate all the details and getting stuff on the plans. Is that correct, Shannon?
Correct. I expect to have something, and I intend to touch base with their environmental scientists by the end of the week. But that's correct.
Okay.
They've been still proactive in staying in touch with me. I'm not having to hound anybody, so I'm not concerned at this point.
Get a motion to table that, or?
Sure, we can do a motion to continue.
All right, I'll make, and then Stan, you'll make a motion to continue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Tabled.
Okay.
I'm glad you said it before I did. Show cause hearing, cease and desist order for conduct of regulated activity without a permit for property located at 1179 Farmington Avenue.
Okay, I want to do just one thing. All right, Phil, you are on? Phil Galsky? I can see him. Hang on. Let me do,
He's still on the list.
yeah. Phil Galsky, can you hear me?
Is he on mute?
No, that's what I'm looking, because there is a fourth.
Doesn't look like it.
He may have stepped away. So these are all our guys, so that had to be Bill. Bill, are you on the line?
I'm sorry. I'm technologically challenged and I couldn't find my mute.
Okay.
Can you hear,
No,
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and Stanley Majewski is with me. He's the member of Plant 17.
Okay, so Stanley's, I was looking to try to see if there was a separate login. Okay. All right. So what I think I'd like to do, and Bob, if you have a different opinion, then please let me know, but I was going to walk through the documents that I have shared with everyone, and then we can go from there.
I think that's going to be the best bet.
Okie doke. All right, so I'm going to start with, I'm going to present the documents in the order that that I emailed them to folks. So it's not necessarily an order of importance, but it's an order of discovery and how the information was shared. So this is the property in question. It's 1179 Farmington Avenue. This property is located behind the temple, on which backs up in Central Way. Coming behind it, the new Anthology Senior Living Facility is located here along Route 4. This property had historically been used for sand and gravel mining under Roger Tofflon, when Roger Tofflon owned this historically, and Mr. Mirzuski just purchased the property in 2017. We were notified by an adjoining property that there was a considerable amount of activity taking place on the property, different than what they had been used to seeing. So they contacted us and asked us to look into it. And this was last Tuesday. Bruce Sear went to the property and then called me out to take a look at it for myself. And what we found was a great deal of earth excavation and filling taking place. So excavation of a berm located between the 1179 property and what's known as 3 Bridgewater Road. This property here, there's a berm that runs this entire length that's probably 30 feet in height approximately. And there's a good bit of activity taking place, and a good bit of fill had been placed in this vicinity. And this estimate of acreage of fill is just that we, understanding where I was with respect to the anthology building and from what I could see down on Central Way. And this is just an online GIS estimated acreage area. When we scroll down through, you can see this area is also delineated as floodplain. This is our GIS version of this map, but this is the same information that shows on the FEMA maps issued by FEMA. So this has just been their GIS data is brought into our system, and we overlay it directly, and so it's an exact replication of it, and just provides an easier graphical representation than using the FEMA map, but that's where this data originates from. This is the wetlands map for the property, and this is again based on the soil and the soil conservation survey that is done. As we know, it's not dead on accurate, as we found for the property where Anthology was built, that this was wetland over here, but there was an area of glacial fill and glacial till here that allowed for the development of 1 Bridgewater lane based on the actual test borings that had been done. But nonetheless, this area shows as wetland on that mapping. These are photographs that were taken. You'll recall, I want to keep bouncing back and forth, but Central Way is just here off the edge of this photo. You walk up an embankment. I'm standing at the top of the embankment. I am looking east. You can see the radio towers on Pinnacle Mountain. I'm looking east, and what the photos are going to do is scroll east to west through the property, and you can see the fill that has been brought in on this eastern peninsula and the grading that has taken place on the rest of the property. And you can see the water. There's water here immediately on the property, and then the water back further out. The pickup truck gives some scale, as does the dozer gives some scale to what we're looking at. This is the berm I referred to, and that berm has been, we're estimating the elevation of that berm has been dropped somewhere between 10 to 20 feet. I don't have an exact survey of that, but estimating it's been dropped approximately 10 to 20 feet. And it's just some trees, so that's just looking, there's some trees that have been pushed over onto the other side of that berm. So that was the first set of information that had been shared with everyone. The next piece, this is the site plan that was presented at the time the Mormon temple was permitted. So this was back in 2011 is the date of this information. And at the time, they were asked not only to identify wetlands on the property, but any wetland within 150 feet of the property. The upland review area of the 150 feet had been enacted at that point. So there's a small wetland on the Temple property. There's an off-site wetland, again, that we were familiar with. This is the same wetland body that comes into the top half of where the anthology property is located. So this is an area of the property that was left. I believe it was ultimately put in conservation easement for anthology over on this location. What you can see, this is Melrose Drive, this is Central Way coming in, and this is the cul-de-sac I mentioned, and as I had said, when I took those photos, I walked up the embankment and I was standing approximately here, and so I showed you the photos in the previous slide that had all the imagery to the east and all the piles of fill that had been placed. So these are all wetlands, small isolated pocket wetlands that had been delineated at the time back in 2011. So that's just a point of reference that at that point in time, those wetlands existed in 2011 and had been identified by a soil scientist with BL companies. I included and there's other pages to this, but I think that suffices for what we need to do right now.
Did you mention the alluvial soil line there too?
Yes, sorry. There is an alluvial soil line. Hang on, I gotta grab the right imageries here.
The alluvial soil.
Hang on. There we go. So the alluvial soils are shown. There's a line here demarking alluvial soils, and then there was a line here through the Temple property, noting alluvial soils as well. And as most of you are familiar with, for our wetlands for the state of Connecticut are defined as poorly drained, very poorly drained soils, and also alluvial and floodplain soils. I shared the delineation report. I don't really see the point of going through that this evening. This is the portion of the report that talks about the 9 small wet depressions have been observed on the offsite, and it's referred to as a mining site at that point in 2011. Let me make sure I've got the right aerials here. Yep, okay. So today I sent through some aerial mapping. And so the aerial maps, we went back again. You can go back to the 30s or 50s or 70s. At one point, this was farm field. In the 70s, 80s, it was a heavily active excavation site. I really didn't see the point, right? That's not germane to what we're talking about. I did go back to 2005. I wanted to note the shape of this pond in 2005 and that this limit, the far eastern limit, was fairly established. You'll notice as I start to flip through, in 2006, this changes. And so when I go to the next photo, the pond, this material's been excavated out, and this end, this western end or central end of the property had changed. But from 2006 forward, we're going to scroll through these photos and you will see that the shape of this pond hasn't changed. I did a quick area calculation on it. It's roughly 14.5 acres. Again, I used our online GIS. It's not based on a survey, but based on that information, it's roughly 14-acre water body. So this is the image in 2006. This is 2008. This is 2010. And I do want to point out that at this point, and this is a September photo, it's starting to revegetate on this eastern half. There's clearly a trail coming through, an access of some nature, but this area is starting to revegetate in 2010. This is a 2012, it's March, so obviously there's no greenery here, but you can still see evidence of vegetation like you can on adjacent properties. It's similar coloring. 2013, more so with the vegetation. 14, 15, 16, and that's April, so that's before everything is popped. September 17, at this point, the current owner is in place. So this is 17, 18, and September of 19. These are Google Earth images that I went through and captured. So again, I wanted to emphasize that this water body had been in existence since 2006 in this configuration. And basically this area had been left to naturalize and establish its own ecosystem since 2006, with some intermittent traffic in this area up to 2010, maybe 2012.
1,000 feet from there to there, probably 700 feet.
So the next item that we have is some additional photos. So these are alternating each photo. There's going to be a photo marker that's shown here, kind of an identifier, and then the next image is the photo itself. This is so the initial photos were all up in here to give you an idea of the fill that had taken place. These are going to come down around the water edge and give you an idea of, I guess, the ecosystem that had established. So this is standing on the top of one of the piles. This is looking east, again, the towers. So this is just some of the active site that is here in this western portion of the site that has continued to be used as a construction yard and stockpile area, which is this is a permitted use. So this is it's in the earth excavation zone, and these stockpiles and the use of that is permitted from a zoning standpoint. Photo 2 is going to be looking out towards the river, so you can see the edge of the material this is the Farmington River that we're looking at that location. 3 is looking southeast into along the edge of fill material, and again, the river off to the side. Image 4 is just scooching us in. It's just basically the same spot, just into the site. 5 is a depression that had formed within the property. Interestingly, some of these depressions did have tadpoles in them. Whether or not they stay hydrated long enough for the tadpoles to mature would remain to be seen. 6 is looking out to the river. There is a small swale here. There is some material that was starting to move down that swale. I walked down the swale in less than half the distance down. There was no longer evidence of material being transported down towards the river. We didn't require any erosion control immediately because there wasn't any imminent danger of material running into the river. There didn't appear to be at that particular point. So I gotta get going the right way here. So this is looking out we're starting to look out into this large pond. That's the pond that you're looking at there. Sorry, I keep going the wrong way, sorry about that. So looking out towards the pond. There's the pond.
Okay. Does that go right back on?
And you can see there's large vegetation around the pond edge. It's fairly well established at this point.
Yeah.
There's a pocket of, you can see fill material brought in, whether this would be classified as a wetland, submerged land location.
That's all right. When this is over, I gotta go get something to drink and eat.
Hey, Jay, can you mute yourself? Jay?
I won't talk.
Well, or I'll mute you. That's fine. Works for me.
Hey, Shannon?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not on my computer. I'm on my phone.
Yeah.
So, that's a submerged land there. More of the pond. Damn, I'm going the wrong way. This is looking back into the property, and you can see the fill, and you can see the fill being brought in right into an area where you have submerged land. And you can see the water seeping into the soil that's been deposited. Same thing, location, and it just seeps into the soil edge, and you can see this, it runs this whole length, and the pond and water areas are here off the edge, and it runs the whole length. That this fill material's been brought into an area that clearly was wet. This shows the same type of imagery. You can see how far that water line is seeping in. You can see fill brought right in. Some of these are speckled alders. I don't know all of the vegetation. We would need to have a wetland scientist and soil scientist on the property, and perhaps a biologist. This is looking, so we came out around and out to the end of Melrose and took a photo here at the end, looking across from the other end of the pond. So that's the last set of photos. And then the only other document that was shared with you is an email exchange between Bill Warner and myself, Bruce Steer, along with Attorney Galsky and Mr. Mirjewski, with respect to our concerns with the property and how the property is going to be used and their intent to use the property moving forward. And at that time expressed concerns with floodplain, aquifer, and inland wetlands, regulated areas. And there's, again, it was shared, the email exchange is self-evident, and that, and then after that date, the ownership transferred to Mr. Mirjewski. So that's where this stands. So that's obviously, we felt that we had more than sufficient information to warrant a cease and desist. The owner was notified via phone and email that day, via phone that day, and then followed up with a cease and desist letter a day or 2 days later that was emailed as well as sent certified mail. And that's kind of where we are with this. DEP has been notified, a variety of agencies, to see if they have any concerns or interest with any of this. And then I have some follow-up information I need to share. They obviously have lots of questions, so I'm trying to provide information to them and have folks I need to follow up with. So, Bob, I don't know, would we like to hear from the owner at this point before the commission has questions, I would think?
Yeah, I mean, again, the one question that I have is going back to your last comment about that email back in 2017 and having a surveyor prepare a map which delineates the current operations, the aquifer, the floodplain areas, and also you're going to delineate elevations. That would really be appropriate to know right now in terms of what's been done out there. But that's also behind us, so you can't really go back to 2017 and delineate what's what was there. We have to try to deal with what's there now and why. So with that, I'm willing to turn it over to the property owner and attorney.
I'll speak soon. Hello, this is Bill Galsky. The intent of the project, which got out of hand out there, the intent was to clean up the project and the area that has been graded and eventually hydroseed it to let it perpetuate with vegetation. The area around the site is obviously changing with the temple, with the convalescent community, with the new school, etc. This property is on fairly high up the list of the town's desire to acquire for open space. My client purchased it a few years ago with the intent of using it for several years and then likely disposing of it. The area, no fill was brought from off the site. All the fill that was used was from the berm that was there. We believe that the berm was constructed probably back in the 40s or 50s, even before Mr. Topolon bought the property, as just a visible screen. Some of you may recall there used to be a farm. This was all part of a farm that went out to Farmington Avenue. It included what's shown as lots 1 and 3. It was all one piece that went to the river. We believe that the areas where we're looking at now, that shows approximately 10 acres filled, was all substantially excavated over the years. We don't believe that there's any wetland soils on there. Prior to the purchase, there were a fair amount of deep hole tests done to determine whether there was any environmental contamination issues out there. I was personally there, probably, I'm guessing, in the area where the number 10 is, by the 10 acres, and the backhoe went down 8 feet and they were still finding construction rubble. And there's no question that the pond is man-made, that it's changing over, as Shannon indicated. The other wetlands pockets, what we would propose to do is go out there and map them, get a soil scientist out. We can work in conjunction with the town if it wants to. We did offer to install any remediation efforts. I did get a chance to see it very briefly this morning, and Shannon didn't think that it needed any remediation or silt fence at this point, and I guess I would agree with her. So there doesn't appear to be any immediate further potential damage, and we'll have to figure out what we've got out there, essentially. We don't believe that the area that's been filled in covers the 10 acres that's shown there, but it's very difficult to tell. It's a big expanse out there. But clearly the pictures do warrant that, it's got the potential to be a serious issue that's going to need to be, looked at, and likely some remediation to it. So we're willing to do that.
Was any survey done in 2017 when the property was purchased? I know there had been discussions, and I don't know if additional conversations took place with Bill Warner. That's the kind of the end of the paper trail that I was able to come up with from 2007.
I think you have. There's
grade surveys.
Yeah, there were grade surveys that were done. With the current mapping that's available, and I guess you call it the CAD system, you're able to come up have a relatively substantially good idea of what was there. There was a lot of junk that was left behind by Mr. Toplon's operation that were cleaned up and removed from the area. So, I mean, the idea has been to try to transform it to make it better over time. You know, if you ask for a survey or the survey, there probably is no one survey that encompasses at least the pond boundary that's out there. We don't disagree that. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, if a surveyor went out and did spot grades, and there was some elevations taken back in 2017 to understand, that would be helpful, because it'd be helpful to understand the fill that has been moved around the site, and to understand the depth of coverage that has perhaps taken place, so we can do a comparison. And it is going to play into the floodplain and understanding how much material needs to be moved from a floodplain standpoint as well. So if that information is available, otherwise we then have to go back to our record information, which is going to be more dated. We've got topo in the 90s, and I don't know, I've been looking at so many maps recently, honestly, on this property. I don't know if I have substantial topography that's more recent than the 90s. So,
yeah, and there probably would not have been any significant difference between your 2 points that you have east and west, where you're showing the red delineation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would have been substantially the same all the way through there prior to the sand getting deposited there. There wouldn't have been any substantial, maybe a few inches here and there, not even a foot, I don't think.
Okay.
But, we may be able to dig through it and find the virgin soil too, the soil that was there before the sand was dumped. It was only done in the last couple of weeks, I guess, right? So we may be able to do that too.
Okay.
The berm is, the berm again is, and you had some pictures of it that showed where the sand had been removed from it. It's just all sand, and it's, I don't think it has any intrinsic value or anything else like that. It's it wasn't designed to hold back water or anything like that. I think again it was done to shield the operation when it was out there.
Sure, and that may be its original nexus for that berm. I think what has over time and is our understanding of floods and FEMA and technology has changed and increased. That berm is in essence what's holding back this flood elevation at a particular point. And this 175 elevation is the 100-year flood elevation that's showing. And there's many areas in this, there's parts of this property that I believe are in the 160s, and then some 170s, some 180s. The top of this berm, looking at some of the mapping that I've been able to get my hands on, seems to be in the 210 range. The property to the north then drops back down to the 175, 170s, 175 Farmington Avenue, and back down into the 170s. So in the absence, while the berm perhaps wasn't designed as a flood control structure, over the course of time, it has become I'll say a flood management structure to a certain extent. Certainly with that whole side being stripped, there would be concern that having all the exposed sand now, it's now much more susceptible to erosion. It had been vegetated, perhaps not with the highest and best vegetation, but it was vegetated. And so now it's stripped, so it's going to have to be replanted, and we are going to need to understand its current elevation. So we'll definitely need to understand the current height of the berm. I still think we've got plenty of, if I'm estimating correctly, there's probably still, that berm is still 15 to 20 feet above that flood elevation. So there's plenty of freeboard there. I don't think there's a concern from a height standpoint, but I think from an integrity standpoint at this point, it would need to be revegetated in order to provide, in order for it to be substantive moving forward.
Yeah.
So, Bob, do you want to move to the commission members to see if folks have questions or if there's other thoughts people are having?
Yeah, again, we'll just go in order. Rich?
I know DEP, there's some LiDAR data that dates back to 2016 that might be able to give us some information as to what the site looked like back then. But other than that, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Emily?
I mean, I feel like we need that past data if we can get it. That's all I got.
Dave?
I was just curious as to what was trying to be accomplished by this.
The initial set of pictures that show the area after the sand had been dumped and it had been flattened out, it was intended to be hydroseeded and essentially turned into a field.
And what?
Oh, okay.
There weren't really any trees, any significant trees in that area at all. Just scrub.
So you were just trying to raise the elevation of the property, is that it?
No, there have been plans, preliminary plans that would connect Central Way through the site over to Bridgewater Road. So it was thought that eventually, the berm is going to go. It doesn't need to be 30 feet tall or however tall it is to still provide, flood prevention if it does, but that's what would provide, future development to this site. There is some virgin land on this site where the recycling portion is going on. That's the initial set of pictures that were shown where the crusher is. Yeah, in that area, it's believed that that is still viably developable land, and so I don't think it has been thought that the berm would stay there forever.
Okay. I'm done.
Robert?
I think we all have the same question because the answers that we're getting just don't make sense. The amount of time and energy and cost to relocate the berm just to seed it doesn't really pass a common sense test. So I think the clear motive would appear to be to increase the developable land. That's my assumption. But I think as we move forward, I'd like to have something in writing from the property owner identifying why the regulated activity was undertaken. Attorney Yelsey did say, in your opening comments that the property was bought to use and then dispose. I assume that meant use it and then sell it for redevelopment. When you said dispose, I don't know what that meant, to dispose of the property.
You want me to respond?
Yes.
Well, as I did mention earlier, the site is on the very high up the town's list for open space because of its frontage along the river. Directly across the river is, where the Tungus meet is, where they have they do the crewing in the river. The river is very wide at that point, and it's because of excavation that's occurred over the years. So, and in this area that's been delineated in the red, it's not anticipated that any development could go there because it's all been filled. It won't support development.
Okay, so when you were in your opening comment, when you said the intent was to use the property and dispose of the property meant conveyance to the town as part of the open space plan. I'm trying to get clarification as to what you meant when you said dispose of the property.
It would be very, very, it's a thought, probably a substantial thought that the area along the river could be conveyed to the town. And then the area back in that's virgin soil, Mr. Is it Stick? Peter? Peter, who developed the front? Fishman, okay. Yeah, Stick was before you. Fishman has expressed an interest in some of it too.
Okay. And then Attorney Galsky, in your opening comments, you identified that, it was a serious situation. I would agree that the extent of the activity that should have been the subject of an application and review by the commission would put this into a significant category for sure. I think the commission will likely need quite a bit of additional information. So Shannon has already identified some of the things we'd be looking for, but I think there is most certainly going to be the need for some professional assessments, including soil scientists, wetland biologists, engineers, and surveyors, so that we can get a better sense for how extensive the regulated activity was that was conducted, and then that will lead into what will need to be done moving forward. The last comment I have is I'm assuming that the rest of I would like to go out for a site walk. I'm assuming the rest of the commission would want to do that as well. And that concludes my comments.
I would agree with what you said. We plan to do all of those things. It may make sense before you do a site walk for us to maybe put some monuments out there so you can identify where you are. You can use your phone if you you go on to MapQuest or something like that. You can you can get substantially where you are out there. But the site is vast. It's a lot bigger than what it looks like in this photograph.
Yeah, we would do it as the site walk would take place as a group spot, probably 2 small groups, and myself and Bruce Steer would probably both participate. And so we have our GIS applications that we can use for orientation purposes with the group. Yeah, the site walk would not take place in absence of staff member, and certainly either you or a representative for the owner is welcome to be present during that site walk as well.
Yeah, we could talk about that. And like I said, maybe put some monuments at the base of the berm, so at least you can have an idea of how far along you are.
That's fine.
But we can certainly talk about that.
Of course.
That was it for me. Thank you.
Mark?
I'm in the preliminary stage because I think I need more information. But Shannon, is there something? I don't know if I've been listening. I'm at home now. I'm looking on the TV, my computer. The pictures have been showing. I saw the pictures of the encroachment onto the Farmington River. Is there something that you're thinking about going in there to try to mitigate any of this soil that's very close to the river be contained somehow by using some type of means to keep it in place?
Okay, hey, and I want to be clear because there's been some misunderstanding on this. It's, to the best of my knowledge, there's been no direct encroachment into the Farmington River. So I want to be very, very clear on that. There are piles that are close, but some of the area up, when you look at this area here and you go back to the historic photos, this area and the piles and work that's been done along this area doesn't change a lot as you take a look at the historic photos. So I want to be very, very clear. To my knowledge, there has been no direct impact to the river. Our area, it's this pond and water body. The fill is coming right up to it on this end and all around on here on this water body. And yes, it was a mine area, but by definition, it is now a water body, and activities within that area are regulated. So,
Okay, I must have misunderstood.
no, there was just one small area. There's like a drainage swale off the property, and either Bruce or I can check it again in the next day or two. But I walked down most of it, and I walked past the edge of the point where there was soil, and then there was all native vegetation, and it didn't look like anything was being transported off-site into the river. So I don't have any immediate concern for material being transported off-site into the river.
Okay, I mean, yeah, the picture I had, maybe if you were looking straight down, you might see the distance between the river and, and this area that's been disturbed. So I think the site visit would do a better, give us a better idea what's going on.
Sure.
That's it, thank you.
Ed?
Yeah, I disagree with the previous discussion that, it's murky, what the point is here, and I think we need more information before we can determine that. That's it.
Okay, that's it for Ned.
Okay.
No, I got nothing. I'm good.
Guy?
No, I've had that walk down there earlier on when they were piling up asphalt pieces and cement in there, and they had to remove it all. But I think it was a little bit north of Laverne, not south. So that's my comments.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, in some of the maps that we've seen, it looked as though there may have been some isolated wetlands on the site over time. You've got the floodplain, you've got the alluvial soils. You go back to the 2017 meeting, I'm assuming it was at the town hall, but there was an indication that there'd be no fill within the floodplain. And 3 years later, we got a bunch of fill in the floodplain. So again, some of the things that were supposed to have been done in 2017 doesn't sound like they were done so people have a better understanding of what's going on. Right now, it's just, to me, it's just a mess. It's also obvious to me that this is a regulated area, and that before doing any of this, somebody should have come in and talked to the town. It's not appreciated when we find out about something like this after the fact. So I'll just leave it at that, and I agree that I think it's appropriate that there's a site walk to figure out just exactly what the site looks like now. But again, if part of the maps that Shannon was showing earlier showed a lot of vegetation depopulating this part of the site, where is it now? What we're seeing basically is, it almost looks like a beach. That's a far different cry from what was up there in September of 2019.
That's not our property. That's the Dunning operation over in there.
That's right here.
No. Isn't he talking about down below? He's talking about the beach?
Talking about right where the cross is.
Oh, I
So
thought you
right
were talking
here
about
is-
the part below that. I'm sorry.
No, but it's green now. It was green in September 2019, and now it looks like a beach. If you were to walk out there today, it looks like a beach.
Yeah, you're right, it does.
That's all, that's my point. So, I guess one of the things, Shannon, you'll need to do is go ahead and try to set up a time for us to get out there.
Yep. Yeah, and Bill, we'll connect tomorrow and discuss soil scientists, wetland biologists, and survey and thoughts on who you may be using for some of that work, and then thoughts on timing for site walk as well.
All right.
The commission meets twice a month, so the next meeting's going to be June 3rd. Ideally, I think, Bob, your thought, I think we still want to get a site walk out before June 3rd and not necessarily wait till a soil scientist or wetland biologist can be out on the site and then do the site walk.
I would agree.
Okay. So we're going to keep at this. We will be on the agenda every 2 weeks for progress reports and updates until we get to a resolution.
Yeah, and Shannon, this is just a thought. Because of the amount of fill that was brought in and deposited into what is a designated floodplain area, what does that possibly do to some of the water elevations in the area? I mean, does it eliminate some of the storage area? I mean, again, I don't know how much.
Probably, yeah. So that's, like I said, Bob, so DEEP has been notified, and of course, there's we did that, and I ended up, initially, of course, there's more questions than answers, understandably. So
yeah.
There's folks I need to follow up with to try to figure out what needs to take place. Okay. Unfortunately, and just so there's two sides to this coin, right? We just talked about the 45 West Avon Road property, and the FEMA maps are using aerial topography to set and delineate. You know, they run the hydraulic models, they understand the elevation of the flood levels at any given location, and then they map out that elevation based on the aerial topography. I don't know how many on-the-ground shots they take to try to normalize that and correct to the aerial topography. But just like we found with the 45 West Avon, right, they have the floodway coming right through the middle of the family's home and the garage. And when you go out there with a survey rod, it's not exactly there.
Yep.
So we need to try to get to a point where we understand how much of this was actually at that 175 elevation or below. And that's why I'm saying if there are spot grades that were taken in 2017, I think that has some value. Otherwise, we've got to go back to whatever historic information that we have available to us. And that will set the benchmark for the elevation that this needs to be returned to, because it does have a flood capacity. So regardless of any other agency that may be interested, the town of Farmington has our own floodplain regulations. It's the TPZ regulations, Article 2, Sections 15, 16, and 17 of our zoning regulations. And they are quite extensive, and they talk about no filling in the floodplain and the need for compensatory storage, et cetera. So we need to understand where that true elevation lies. And again, in the absence of the owner being able to provide that for when he purchased the property, then we'll have to use our record maps. But yes, that does need to be addressed. Thankfully, we don't have a hurricane or any major event that's imminent. But yes, this could pose a real notable problem to downstream properties or any even upstream properties that is taking storage volume from floodwaters and notable. We're not talking about, a tenth of a foot. This is notable volume that is being taken up that could be truly problematic in the event of a 100-year storm. So.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a game plan.
Okay.
Ooh, the sand.
All right. I'm assuming, Bill, do you have anything else you need to share this evening?
No. We did talk about the fact that we don't think there's any, any mitigation, or there's no immediate threat out there that needs to be addressed. But if we discuss that, then we'll.
Yep.
But look forward to working with you, I guess.
Yeah, I think we'll become well acquainted. I'll plan on touching base with you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Do you have anything else to report?
Oh, sure, why not? Because,
It's been a quiet week.
You made up for it with the length of this meeting tonight.
Yeah, well, I had a doozy on Monday night too, so it's definitely been one of those weeks. So I'm not going to bring up a picture for this. So I've got a pool application for an above-ground pool at 48 Farmington Ridge. Farmington Ridge is off of Mountain Lane that runs between Birdseye and Mountain Road that runs between Birdseye and Route 10 in the center of town. And Farmington Ridge runs off of that over towards East Farm School. When the subdivision was developed, there's some larger wet areas, conservation easements, et cetera. The way this particular lot was developed, pretty much their entire about 20 feet off the back of their home, their conservation easement starts. To the side of their home was still wetland, but it was allowed to be used it was delineated wetland, but it is being used as usable yard as part of how the project was approved. And that is where they are setting their above ground pool. It's not in ground. There's probably a little bit of excavation to allow for the pad to get leveled out. So I've handled it as an agent review. They've done the notifications and it's moving ahead, but I did want to make you aware. Again, driving by, you're not going to know that it was a wetland because it's been used as a usable yard area since the project was constructed. So, and that's how it was approved. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And that's all I have for a planner's report. I've been otherwise occupied.
That's it?
That's it. That's it. I know, I'm slacking.
Get a motion to approve the minutes of May 6th?
So moved.
Second.
Any
Second,
comments,
Jay.
questions? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining? Okay. I guess we're closing the wetlands at about 9:38 maybe?
Sure.
I didn't print off an agenda for wetland, or for conservation. Do we have anything there?
So the only other thing would be on that land acquisition, obviously there isn't a report. I didn't know if you've had an opportunity to take care of your paperwork yet.
No.
Okey doke.
I will do that by Monday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can actually have till Tuesday. We got a 3-day weekend this weekend.
That's why I said Monday. I got the day off.
I understand.
Look, I'm getting calls at home from Katie Dykes now, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you win. So that's fine. So that's the only outstanding item that needs to get taken care of for Land Act. And then I just have 2 things to report. Simple recycling is our textile recycling, the peak bags at the curb. We have numbers from March, and they didn't even run the entire month of March. They had to suspend on March 23rd, but we had almost 2 tons of material picked up. Well, a ton and a half. We had a ton and a half material. 191 pickups and 3,160 pounds of material that went to recycling and stayed out of the waste stream. So thank you for all who participate with that. And then during our spring bulk waste pickup, the mattress recycling also went very well. We had 411 mattresses picked up, and which totaled 22,000 pounds. So again, that stayed out of the waste stream, that material was recycled, and it's cost savings to the town not having to pay for the disposal costs of those mattresses. So from a conservation standpoint, those are both nice bright spots for us. And the simple recycling, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, it's back on track, so we should be seeing pink bags out and about. They restarted the end of April.
I know we got a bag.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Then I've got to
That's
assume there are minutes that also need to be approved
Oh, yeah, right.
for May.
For May 6th.
Yep.
A motion to approve the minutes for May 6th?
Okay.
Anyone?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining? So be it. They're approved, and I believe it's time to say goodnight.
I concur.
Thanks for the quick meeting, you guys.
An interesting week.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone, for getting
Nice.
on and
Good
hanging in.
night.
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.